Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning. I'm Rabbi Jenny Greenspan with Congregation Beth-El, and I am here for our Shabbat Shuvah Torah Talk, our Torah Talk for the Shabbat in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This week we are going to be reading from Parashat Ha'azinu, which is in our Chumash, if you are following in an Etz Chaim Chumash on page 1185. It's downloadable from the Be Easy website as usual. And if you are following in a different Chumash, it is Deuteronomy chapter 32, Parashat Ha'azinu. We'll be going straight from the beginning of the Torah portion, and that is the beginning of the chapter. So far, good morning and Shabbat Shalom to Jim Roth and to Miles Siegel. So good to see many joining us, and Alan Hamburger. So good to see so many every week. I hope we are all having a restful season of repentance and reflection in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And I think that this Torah portion can speak to that a little bit. And good morning, Shabbat Shalom, Cheryl, too. So good to see everybody each week. And I know I missed joining you all last week on Shabbat morning when Rosh Hashanah fell on Shabbat. But I hope that you all tuned into our Rosh Hashanah live stream and enjoyed the combination service then. And it's nice to return to what has become a little bit of our new normal of doing our Shabbat Torah Talk here, and then we'll have our live stream service with Cantor Melissa and myself in a few minutes at 10 o'clock afterward. But Shabbat Shalom, good morning, Carol Steinfeld, and to Phyllis Luger also. So good to see you two each week as well. So as I said this morning, we are in Parashat Ha'azinu, which means literally it means give ear, listen, like in the Shakespearean sense, friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears. We have that same kind of setup, and similarly to that, this is Moses giving a poem, a song, as Moses is ready to preparing to die. At the end of this week's Torah portion, God will call Moses up to the mountain where Moses will be given a view of the land of Israel, but won't get to go into it. And in the final Torah portion that we will read, actually on Simchat Torah next week, doesn't usually have a Shabbat assigned to it, is when Moses will die. So this is Moses's final speech and final opportunity to speak to the people before he will stop being their leader, before he will head on into his death and pass the leadership over to Joshua ben Nun, his successor, who will take them into the land. And this is almost always, it is not a strict rule, but this is almost always the Torah portion that falls in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur on Shabbat Shuvah, as it does this week. And I want to point out something interesting, but much of this Torah portion is rebuke, is Moses already seeing that the people, once he is gone as a leader, will not be as good and attached to God's laws as Moses would hope. And much of it is rebuke. And very uniquely, this Torah portion is given in the form of a poem. It is given in the form of a shirah, a poem or song. And in the Torah scroll itself, it is laid out quite differently from other parshiot. Normally we see just very singular wide columns, and this Torah portion is written in two narrow columns with a third blank column in between, so that the three total are about the width of one of the normal columns of the Torah, which makes it very hard to read, both in what it says and to simply read, because the lines are very disjointed, because this portion, I think, is supposed to make us a little bit disjointed. We are supposed to be noticing all of the things that Moses says that we can and could be doing wrong as we approach Yom Kippur, as we prepare for doing tshuva, repentance toward God. And it is part of the poetic nature of this Torah portion. So I want to look at just the first few verses and think a bit about the power of poetry and the power of emotional speech versus much more didactic speech, like much of the laws given in the Torah might be. The first two verses, Ha'azinu hashamayim ve'adabera, v'tishma ha'aretz imrei fi, ya'arof kematar likri tazal katal, amarti kis'irim ale deshe, v'chirvi'im alai esev Give ear, O heavens, let me speak. Let the earth hear the words I utter. May my discourse, may the Torah, come down as rain, my speech distill as dew, like showers on young growth, like droplets on the grass. Here Moses has shifted from, these are laws, follow them, to let the Torah shower you like rain. Let it come down and soak in into the earth. Moses calls on both heaven and earth to witness and to be there for us and to be reminders to do Torah and to do God's words. In Sifrei Devarim, one of the earlier Midrashic texts on the book of Deuteronomy, they point out, the ancient rabbis pointed out that rain, as is pointed out here, gives life, that it comes down and allows plants to grow, just as Torah should come down and allow us to grow. But just as some people would rejoice in the rain, others are distressed by it. For example, if this is the ancient world, if you are someone who has a pit or a vat that is full of wine that has not yet been fully pressed, or you have a threshing floor full of grain that has not been fully put away, the rain can be distressing. And so the Sifrei asks, is this going to be true of Torah? Is this true of Moses' words? The Sifrei says no. My speech shall distill like dew, is in the verse, that it will seep in and care for us in gentle ways like dew. And that most people rejoice in dew. It's just a little bit of water and it seeps in gently. And therefore we should rejoice in the words of Torah. The more modern rabbis kind of point out that it may not always be the case. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner says our teacher, Rabbi Solomon Urman, is intrigued by this kind of words that Moses is referring to in his own speech. What does he mean by such a description, that it will come down like rain and distill like dew? The poetry works, Rabbi Kushner says. Words, like rain, can be soft like a morning dew that gently offer itself the earth's vegetation, tending to its growth, or words can be like torrential rains that destroy and uproot. And just as plants need different rains to nurture their growth, people need different words as well. There are times when we need gentle speech, and there are times when harsh words of rebuke are necessary. And this is why I think this portion comes right in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, getting ready for Yom Kippur. Do we need the gentle words, the gentle reminders of who we can be, or do we need to actually be listening for the harsh rebuke? What have we done wrong that we need to see and hear the call to turn? Rabbi Kushner says, know well the kind of words needed and speak them well, warns our teacher, Moses. All words, when properly delivered, are the living God, that sometimes the Torah indeed should come down as a torrential rain of rebuke, and other times as dew of showers of little bits of grass. We need to see the emotional impact of the Torah and of our words. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, says at the end of Moses' life, the greatest of all prophets turned to emotional intelligence. He stops being a didactic teacher of law, knowing that unless he did so, returning to the emotional intelligence, his teachings might enter the minds of the Israelites and the Jewish people, but not their hearts, their passions, their very emotive DNAs. Without the prophetic passion that we see throughout the Tanakh from Amos, Hosea, Isaiah, Jeremiah, or without the musics of the Psalms, Judaism would have been a plant without water or sunlight. It would have withered and died. Intellect alone doesn't inspire in us the passion to change the world. And so I think this Torah portion is a poem on purpose. We close the Torah, and Moses closes his speech to the people with a poem, with a song that can be read in multiple ways. It reminds us that sometimes we need to be gentle and offer our words kindly, and sometimes we need to be harsh and call out injustice and call out bad action that we see around us, and that all of that is Torah. All of those, as Rabbi Kushner said, are the living words of God, and that emotional call, that's hearing and seeing what people need, are the only way for the Torah to truly sink in like dew, as Rabbi Sacks says. And so I hope as we enter our final Shabbat before Yom Kippur, we think deeply on what kinds of rain, what kinds of torrential rebukes do we need to offer ourselves, and what kinds of gentle dew do we need to offer, what kinds of encouragements and what kinds of gentle reminders should we be offering ourselves. So I hope as we enter Yom Kippur into our final moments of teshuvah and of reaching out toward God, we find the ways to allow the waters of Torah to enrich us, to sate our thirst, and to make ourselves an even better form, make of ourselves even better forms of ourselves in 5781 as we start embarking on this new year. So Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for joining me. Shabbat Shalom, Margot May and Eric Hogan. Shabbat Shalom, Natasha Devine and Amanda Messenger. I'm so happy to see all of you. If I missed a comment, I apologize, but Shabbat Shalom. I am so glad you've all joined me, and I look forward to seeing you at 10 o'clock on our live stream of our Shabbat morning service, where we will be reading Parashat Ha'azinu from our Torah. We'll see you soon. Shabbat Shalom.